Is there any real evidence for God? Or are we simply searching for meaning in the dark? For centuries, philosophers, theologians, and scientists have debated this timeless question, but few voices have been as bold and unapologetic as Richard Dawkins. Known for his groundbreaking book, The God Delusion, Dawkins challenges the very foundation of religious belief. He doesn't just reject God, he demands evidence, and not the kind that relies on faith, tradition, or ancient texts, but hard, testable, scientific proof. Dawkins argues that if God exists, it should be considered a hypothesis like any other, and one that has, so far, failed every scientific test. No measurable evidence, no observable data, no divine fingerprints. But here's the twist. Dawkins wasn't born an atheist. In fact, he once believed. It was Darwin's theory of evolution that opened his eyes to a universe that doesn't need a designer. If complexity can arise from natural selection, why invoke a supernatural creator at all? In this video, we're diving deep into the mind of one of the world's most controversial scientists. From biology to belief, from faith to facts, we'll explore why Dawkins believes that science doesn't just explain the world, it makes God unnecessary. If you're curious, skeptical, or simply love big questions, stay tuned. This isn't just about God. It's about truth, reason, and the power of asking, why? Richard Dawkins is not just a biologist. He's a force of intellectual rebellion. Known globally for his bold critiques of religion and his powerful defense of evolution, Dawkins challenges one of the most ancient and deeply rooted questions in human history. Is there any real evidence for God? In The God Delusion, Dawkins doesn't simply make a case for atheism. He builds a scientific and philosophical framework that invites us to question everything. His journey began in faith, like many others. Raised in a religious environment, he once accepted the idea of God as a given. But as he delved deeper into biology, especially evolutionary theory, he encountered a different kind of beauty, one that didn't require a designer. Evolution, he argues, is the key that unlocks the mystery of life. The intricate complexity of living organisms, which once seemed to demand a creator, can now be understood through natural selection, a blind but incredibly powerful process. For Dawkins, the elegance of evolution doesn't just explain life, it dethrones the necessity of God. He doesn't dismiss religion lightly. Instead, he dissects it, treating it not as sacred ground, but as a hypothesis, one that must stand up to the same scrutiny as any other claim about reality. His central argument? That God is not only unnecessary for understanding the universe, but is often a roadblock to real understanding. As Dawkins puts it, faith is the great cop-out, the great excuse to evade the need to think and evaluate evidence. In The God Delusion, Richard Dawkins sets out not just to question belief, but to systematically dismantle the foundations of theism. He opens the intellectual battlefield with one fundamental question. If there is a God, what kind of being are we talking about? A supernatural creator, an all-loving, all-powerful deity. And if so, why does reality tell such a different story? Dawkins dives straight into one of philosophy's oldest dilemmas, the problem of evil. If God is both omnipotent and benevolent, why do innocent children suffer? Why do natural disasters wipe out entire communities? The presence of random, senseless suffering in the world seems incompatible with the idea of a caring, divine overseer. For Dawkins, this isn't just a philosophical puzzle, it's a devastating argument against the moral coherence of traditional religion. Then there's the question of design. The complexity of life, its breathtaking intricacy, has long been used as proof of a divine architect. But Dawkins flips the narrative. Rather than point to God as the explanation, he points to natural selection. Evolution is not random chaos. It's a precise, cumulative, and observable process that explains how complex life emerged from simplicity, without the need for a designer. And what about the supernatural itself? Dawkins argues that invoking the supernatural to explain what we don't understand is intellectually lazy. It's a dead end. God did it is not a satisfying answer. It's an escape hatch from curiosity. At the heart of it all, Dawkins exposes the contradictions embedded in the concept of God: perfect but jealous, omnipotent but somehow in need of worship, loving yet wrathful. He urges us to stop making excuses for these contradictions and start asking deeper questions without fear. If religion asks us to believe, science dares us to ask. And Richard Dawkins is one of the loudest voices calling us to reason. One of his most powerful points is rooted in cosmic perspective. The universe is vast, so vast in fact, that the scale itself can be almost unbearable. Galaxies stretch for billions of light years in all directions. Stars are born and die in silence. Earth, in this cosmic ocean, is a tiny blue speck. And we, humans, are brief visitors on its surface. Against this backdrop, the idea that the entire universe was made with us in mind seems wildly self-important. Then comes biology, where complexity is often mistaken for design. But Dawkins reminds us, complexity does not require a designer. It evolves. Over billions of years, from single-celled organisms to intelligent life, evolution paints a picture far more profound than any myth. The human eye, once held up as proof of divine craftsmanship, is now known to have evolved through gradual, testable steps. No miracle required, just time, variation, and natural selection. And what about morality, purpose, beauty? Dawkins argues that we don't need religion to explain them. Logic, evidence, and scientific inquiry give us tools far more reliable than faith. While faith rests on conviction without proof, science thrives on doubt, testing, and discovery. In Dawkins's view, reason is not cold. It's exhilarating. It gives us the courage to say, "I don't know," instead of "God must have done it." It teaches us to value truth over comfort, evidence over tradition. In his words, there's real poetry in the real world. Science is the poetry of reality. Belief is powerful. It shapes cultures, inspires art, starts wars, builds communities, and sometimes tears them apart. Richard Dawkins doesn't deny the emotional pull of faith. In fact, he acknowledges it. But he challenges us to ask, where does belief end, and where does truth begin? Throughout history, countless philosophical and theological arguments have been offered to prove the existence of a God. Ontological, cosmological, moral, teleological. Each one, Dawkins argues, leans heavily on human intuition rather than observable evidence. They ask us to reason backward from belief rather than forward from reality. For Dawkins, faith is not a pathway to truth, it's a shield from it. But it would be unfair to ignore what religion does offer. For many, faith provides comfort, a sense of purpose and community. In times of grief, it offers solace. In times of confusion, it offers clarity. Religion in this sense can be a deeply human response to uncertainty. Yet Dawkins points out the double edge of that sword. The same beliefs that bring comfort can also justify violence, bigotry, and ignorance. History is filled with atrocities committed in the name of gods, holy wars, inquisitions, persecution of those who think differently. Faith, when unchallenged, can become dangerous. And what about morality? Dawkins fiercely rejects the idea that we need religion to be good. In fact, he turns the question around. Why does a God's command make something moral? Would killing be wrong if a divine being hadn't forbidden it? He argues that morality evolves with society, that empathy, cooperation, and fairness are natural traits, shaped by evolution and social necessity, not etched onto stone tablets from on high. Ultimately, Dawkins doesn't just ask whether God exists, he asks whether we need God to live meaningful, ethical, and fulfilling lives. And his answer is clear. We don't need faith to be human. We just need courage to think. Richard Dawkins has drawn clear lines in the sand, but the world isn't always so black and white. Beyond his arguments lies a deeper, more nuanced question. Can science and religion coexist? Or are we forever locked in a tug-of-war between reason and faith? In recent years, a growing number of thinkers, scientists, and theologians have entered the conversation. not to win a battle, but to build a bridge. The dialogue between science and religion is evolving. Some argue that science explains the how, while religion explores the why. Others see the two as fundamentally incompatible, speaking entirely different languages. But one thing is clear: critical thinking and evidence-based reasoning are on the rise. Younger generations are increasingly skeptical of traditional dogmas. They're asking questions, demanding proof, seeking meaning beyond inherited beliefs. In a world of instant information and global communication, blind faith is losing its grip, and curiosity is taking its place. That doesn't mean religion is disappearing. Instead, it's transforming. Some believers reinterpret their faith in symbolic or metaphorical terms. Others embrace science fully, while holding on to a spiritual worldview. And some leave religion behind entirely, finding wonder in the natural world and moral grounding in shared humanity. Dawkins's legacy is not just a critique of religion. It's a call to consciousness, a reminder that we can build lives of meaning without myths, that awe belongs not only in churches, but also in laboratories, forests, and star-filled skies. Maybe the real future lies not in choosing sides, but in learning to ask better questions. Questions that unite us in our shared search for truth, wherever it may lead. So is there real evidence for God? Or have we, as Richard Dawkins suggests, outgrown the need for a divine explanation in a world illuminated by science and reason? Whether you agree with Dawkins or not, one thing is certain: asking tough questions is the beginning of real understanding. In a world flooded with belief systems, ideologies, and traditions, the courage to question is a revolutionary act. If science offers answers that don't require supernatural claims, maybe it's time to rethink not just what we believe, but why we believe it. Thank you for watching. If you found this video thought-provoking, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves deep questions. Drop a comment below. Do you think science has replaced God? Or is there still room for faith in an age of reason? Let's talk. Let's think. Let's question. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and never stop seeking the truth.